Yeah. Yo, it's, what do you think about people that aren't lean or aren't active? Do you think there's a practical application for sugar fasting or sugar diet? And if so, kind of what's the framework look like there?
The thing that I think is awesome about this particular diet is that you can curtail it to just about anybody. That's how strongly I believe in it, because you can take this as far as you need to. So for somebody that is, let's say, 300 pounds, and they really have a lot of weight to lose, both of us were 300 plus pounds at one point. I think them going with a diet that's primarily just like smoothies and fruit for a little bit. Now, of course, they could break that up and they could have some protein here and there, and they could have some lean sources of protein and some good sources of fat and stuff like that, maybe every 2 or 3 days, or maybe even every other day. Something like that I think would be appropriate for somebody like that. Somebody who wants to get leaner, they could just take their time and have it be a little bit slower of a process. Because for someone to go down from, say, like 20% body fat down to like 15, that's a significant difference. And someone's going to notice, people are going to notice some pretty good changes in you. That process probably wouldn't really take that long, and I don't think it would feel brutal. It would probably be challenging, but it wouldn't feel brutal. But then to go down from like 15% to 12%, it's like a whole nother, it's a whole nother level, right? And then to go down to 12%, getting down to 9%. And then when you start to get down to these weird levels where you're like consistently below 10%, it just gets weird. Yeah. And that's when you have to really tweak and really like pull things in, pull things out. And that's where I feel like I'm at right now, is I'm trying to figure out, how do I manage a very low body fat percentage and have it feel, how do I normalize it? Yep. How do I have it not feel like, because I've competed in bodybuilding before, I got on stage before, and I didn't feel like, but I was on an enormous amount of steroids. Yeah. And I was doing 90 minutes of cardio every single day. So luckily I had a coach, Hani Rambad, who's the best of the best. He's amazing. He knew better than to just like pull calories out from me. He probably recognized that it's my first bodybuilding show, and that probably wouldn't have been awesome for me to do.
And he knew that it was your first bodybuilding show.
Yeah, he knew it was my first bodybuilding show, and he probably felt like that wasn't a great idea for me to sink my calories down too low. So he was like, with you being a former fat guy and with the previous diet that I had, the other thing he did that I thought was smart was he brought carbohydrates into the picture, but he's like, we can't give you a lot of carbohydrates because I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. So I was able to have, like, on hard training days, like 200 or so. And then on the other days, maybe like 100, 150. So it wasn't like all of a sudden I started blasting carbs out of nowhere. He was just kind of sensible with it and gave me a diet plan that wasn't, it was annoying because it's, 6 meals, you need a lot of meal prep and all that kind of stuff. And the fat is really low, but it wasn't that hard to follow.
Have you noticed anything with different kinds of sugars giving different feelings? Like we've got obviously sucrose, glucose, fructose. We've got different kinds, and they do wildly different things in the body. That's the thing. It's like a carb is not a carb is not a carb. Like they are very different. Just like a fat is not a fat is not a fat. Like a saturated fat is wildly different from a short chain saturated fat compared to a polyunsaturated, wildly different from a trans fat, right? So what have you noticed? Have you started to notice any kind of difference between these different sugars, right?
So far, I'm noticing that, first of all, I just love fruit. I love the taste of fruit, and I love the energy that it provides. And I would say the same thing with honey. But what I've also noticed was other carbohydrates, such as like starches and stuff like that, I seem to react to way differently, especially when it comes to something like rice. Rice, for some reason, seems to warm my body up. My body temperature feels like it goes up. Rice, in some weird way, almost feels like the carbohydrates are like going into my muscle cells, which I don't know what gives me that thought. Maybe it's just the fact that glucose goes to your liver, or I'm sorry, the fructose goes to your liver, and I know that can happen from fruit, but it feels like it's more than just like psychological. It feels like something else is going on there. So like post workout, having some rice, and I mentioned this recipe to you earlier. I've been experimenting with some rice and some chocolate frosted flakes post-workout, and it's just like the greatest combination of carbohydrates, but along with that, it's got just really cool texture to it. I put a little salt with it, and yeah, it's delicious. But yeah, the carbs they have a different reaction. I haven't noticed. So sometimes people say that carbs make them sleepy. Mm-hmm. I haven't noticed that except for my meal at night. That's with protein. It's with protein and fat. So when I have a meal at night, just so people know, the sugar diet and sugar fasting is you're having fruit juice, maple syrup, honey. You can have candy, and you can have table sugar. Those are like the main sources that you're utilizing to just like leverage having some sugars during the day. You can have some vegetables too if you wanted to. And then in the evening, for myself, I'm usually having 150, maybe 200 grams of protein, somewhere in that neighborhood of some meat and a starch, and sometimes vegetables too. And when I have that, that's usually when I'm just like, whoosh, the day is over. I already did all my filming for the day. I already did all the requirements I needed to do for the day, all the lifting and whatever else. And that's when I'll have my meal, and I'm with my family, and it just feels really like soothing. But that's the only time I'll start to feel that almost like sugar crash, I guess you would call it.
Yeah, it's hard to tell if that's coming from the end of the day and just the fatigue that's natural for the end of the day, or if it has something to do with the tryptophan in conjunction with the insulin spike, right? Like you consume carbs, you're going to have an insulin spike. But if there's no like large neutral amino acids to compete with each other, then it's really just an insulin spike that's kind of unopposed isn't the word, but like it's an insulin spike without driving any particular aminos into the brain. Whereas when you have that sugar spike with the protein, you have the tryptophan that's actually going and converting into serotonin and melatonin. So maybe you're getting like all this copacetic in the world, calm, cool, and you're just ready to kind of go to sleep. And that could be the combination there.
For me, it feels like just an amazing like calming effect. Yeah. Like whatever the case is on whatever exactly is going on, it just feels incredible. And I think some of my cravings have changed. So because I'm allowing sugars into my diet, the cravings for pizza, the cravings for fattier foods even, they're not completely gone. It's not like they don't exist anymore. I still smell pizza and stuff like that, and I still see certain foods. But the cravings have shifted. Like what I want to eat, or what I'm craving, what I'm thinking about. I'm usually thinking about meat. I'm thinking about starch, rather than like focusing on all this stuff that I'm not allowed to eat. As opposed to, when I had the war on carbs, or when I was doing like keto style diets or low carb diet. It reminded me of going underwater and like holding your breath. Like, let me get the biggest gulp of air before I go under. And when you're doing like a keto style diet, when you have your cheat day or cheat meal, or just even reintroduce some carbohydrates for a day or two, that's what it feels like. It's like, I better get all this in because now I know I'm going through this like suffering phase, or whatever, however you want to word it. You're going through this phase that's going to be difficult, and you're not going to have those carbohydrates there. So yeah, my cravings have shifted big time.
Do you think, based on that, I mean, some of the keto processed foods out there are just abysmal in terms of the ingredients that are in them, like some really bad things, like tons and tons of seed oils, tons of all this, and they're just like hyper palatable stuff, just minus the sugar, right? Like I think that most people, even in the low carb sphere, and even in my realm, like they find, okay, yeah, that's a hodgepodge of lots of different things. But, the sugar diet, where I think people might get a little hung up, is they think, okay, well, this is pure sugar, it's going to be a pure insulin spike. And we got to remember that is one thing, right? One particular thing, like the insulin, the glucose, that's a problem for certain people, sure. But you are also eliminating a lot of other variables, right? So like when you look at like a typical keto food product, I am of the belief that seed oils are probably problematic. I don't have the RCTs to back it up, but I can say Thomas DeLauer's opinion is that I believe that seed oils are problematic. I think something's going on there, whether it's the oxidation, whether it's the endocannabinoids, whether all this, right? And my point with all of this is that with this sugar fasting, especially if it's treated as like temporary fasting here and there, like you are eliminating a lot of variables, like weird, nefarious things that come in through our food. So I see that big time. I think the concern a lot of people have is, like, do you have concerns that you're going to disrupt sort of your insulin homeostasis, or your, not just your HbA1c, but perhaps your, you know, homostatic AR, like your HOMA-IR. Any concerns there? Have you noticed anything?
I first want to say, in terms of like seed oils and other things that could be in some of these highly processed foods, and yes, I understand that I'm eating candy, so I'm not throwing shade at like all processed foods. But there's just stuff in processed foods that we don't really know that much about all the time, and seed oils is one of those things. I would say that like seed oils aren't pro-metabolic, you know, and I think that we need to find more stuff that's like pro-metabolic, and that's what the sugar diet is trying to do. Is it the absolute best? Is it the like savior that we're looking for? I think over time it could be refined, and it could be better than it is right now. And you also mentioned about like spiking insulin levels. Their insulin levels, which before I started this diet, I just never even really thought about it, but things like fructose, they don't need insulin. Yeah. So we say these things and we just kind of take them and then we spit them out and we regurgitate them just all over the place to other people, and then it turns out that's like not necessarily true. Yeah. What I'm finding with this diet, a lot of times when somebody's mentioning something about glycation, or somebody's mentioning something about like your A1C, or these different things that could be skewed in your blood work, I think they're forgetting the fact that this particular diet, the sugar diet, is in the absence of fat. So when you start to pull fat calories away, you're really changing even something as simple as glycemic index. You know, years ago, everyone kind of made a big deal about that, and then everyone's like, well, how does that pertain to somebody that like 20 minutes earlier they ate a banana and now they're eating a rice cake? It's like, okay, well, everything's just different then. Or if someone had a protein shake and a rice cake, it changes it would change the glycemic index greatly, because now you're bringing in a lot of other food to like potentially slow it down. In other cases, it might be speeding it up. It just gets to be all over the place. So the things that we think are true right now are almost always all up.
Yeah, agreed.
And a lot of that has to do with like who we're doing a study on, what the study is for. Sometimes if they're studying, you know, carbohydrate, they're sometimes studying people that are like type 2 diabetic. I'm not saying that all the studies, I'm just saying that like we have to kind of have context to these things. And for myself, I like to experiment, I like to try things. So that's why I'm giving this diet a chance. The easiest way to look at this particular protocol is that it's it's high carb and low fat. Yeah. That's basically what it is. And then the manipulation of the protein and stuff, each person out there can kind of determine for themselves how much they want to manipulate that. But I can't say that I know this is definitely true, but this was true for me, and I think it had to do with protein and fats being high, maybe potentially the saturated fat, I don't really know. But whatever diet I was doing previously, it would leave my A1C not necessarily like real high, but it'd be high-ish. And then same thing with my blood sugar. And you and I can go over some like blood work on another show when I send some of the blood work over to you, and we can show everybody. I'm not trying to say that this is the diet for you to utilize for health, because I have all kinds of other wrong with my blood work. For various reasons. Some of them might be genetic, some of them might be steroids. Like I've been on steroids for 20 years. Yeah. And then also, we would have to compare my blood work to previous blood work to really get a good look at that. So that's something I'm willing to do, because I think it's important. I think that people should see some of this stuff, but they should also understand that these things are, while they are important, they're not as important as the overall big picture. Hey, what's your homocysteine, or what's your like this particular thing? It's like, well, we're just looking at one thing like a little bit too much direct, and we made these mistakes before. We made these mistakes with cholesterol, and we just kind of keep making the same mistakes. I think sometimes by the time you learn about something that's supposed to be really important, it's like it's already switched over to something else. I think ApoB is like a big thing, right? And then like the blood work I got back recently, because I don't know a ton about all this stuff, like APO1's on there too. And I'm like, I didn't know about that. I didn't know about that one. So it's just, and we can't take that number and celebrate, and we can't take that, and on the same, on the other side of that, we can't take that number and think that we're gonna like die because like this one number is off.